Germany, 152 million years ago. Though at this time you won't find a large stretch of land in any direction, just a vast series of islands. While large dinosaurs are common across the globe by now, here they remain small, and are outnumbered by the vast flocks of pterosaurs. Many species make their homes both on and above the islands here, each adapted for feeding on the plentiful sources of food that the ocean and small pockets of land provide. Cycnorhamphus are tiny, speedy flyers that feed on insects, while Rhamphorhynchus snare fish in their toothy jaws. And Baleenognathus, with its spatula-shaped beak, is a filter feeder. Their colonies can be hundreds of thousands strong, stretching over tens of kilometers of islands. The sound of so many chirping and crying reptiles alone can be deafening. Every year, this vast crowd of pterosaurs is joined by an additional species that arrives on their annual migration. In great numbers come the flocks of Cycnorhamphus. Adults can have wingspans over a meter and stand about half a meter tall on the ground. The swarms contain individuals of all ages, and it doesn't take an expert to notice that this species has two different morphs. The young look much like other pterosaurs, with large crestless heads and long toothy beaks, excellent for snaring fish. The adults, however, sport a tall crest that in the males goes far back behind the head. It is the tips of their jaws that is the most unique feature, however. With a thick, bulbous upper jaw and a scoop-like upward-facing lower jaw, Cycnorhamphus's face almost looks like a pair of salad tongs. But it is not assorted plants that their jaws are evolved to scoop up, however. Their diet is just as strange as their appearance. The mass of Cycnorhamphus land on the assorted beaches and begin biting into the soft sands closest to the water. As they churn up the sand with their broad tips of their beaks, they sweep their heads from side to side, snapping in rapid succession. More and more of the small pterosaurs file into the beaches, and occasionally one lifts up its head, having found something of interest. This time it is a worm, and he throws it back into the more normal looking part of his jaws and swallows it happily. Plenty of invertebrates live just below the surface, from prawns to crabs, and if small enough and unable to escape the sweeping, clacking jaws of the Cycnorhamphus, they will be pulled into the light and swiftly swallowed. Some even wade into the shallowest stretches of water as waves splash against their limbs and faces. If given the chance, a few take daring snaps at any fish that get too close to them, but the slippery morsels are just too fast. Not everything that is pulled from the sands is edible, however. Some crabs are simply too large to be swallowed, and if the Cycnorhamphus aren't careful, they could get nipped by the pincers of a vengeful crab. Others pull up oysters, mussels, and other hard-shelled creatures. These the pterosaurs cannot break open, try as they might. They lack the crushing jaw power to crack them open, and both the tools and intelligence to figure out how to pry them open. So the hard-shelled invertebrates remain safe. However, if they can't dig deep enough into the sediment to get out of reach of the Cycnorhamphus, then they are likely to be pulled up and over again by different individuals, thinking they have just bagged their next meal. And there are a lot of Cycnorhamphus. They do not venture too far into the water, however, both because there are multiple species of ichthyosaur that patrol the shallow seas, and even a small wave could knock them over or sweep them below to get pulled out and under. Because there are so few large terrestrial predators here, these flying reptiles are mostly safe to feed and sleep without issue, as this is only a short stop on their migration route. When they come back the opposite way in a few months, they will stop here again to feed and rest before completing the whole journey. Their usual homes are lakes, floodplains, and generally anywhere there is shallow water for them to forage, be it mud, sand, or grit. This location is a bi-yearly vacation spot for them, though they may only stay a few days, and then just as quickly as they arrive, the huge numbers disappear into the horizon. This makes the area only a little less busy though. Plenty of other pterosaur species come and go from this area as well, and others never leave. So it's an unusual day indeed, if pterosaurs aren't flying and screeching overhead. Hello fellow travellers and welcome back. Today we will be breaking down the pterosaur with possibly the strangest face of the entire family, Cycnorhamphus. The first remains of Cycnorhamphus were discovered all the way back in 1855 in Germany, and originally these remains were assigned to the genus Pterodactylus. At this time, Pterodactylus was basically a wastebasket taxon for all pterosaur remains, similar to how Megalosaurus was for dinosaurs. In 1870 it was assigned to a new genus, its full name being Cycnorhamphus suvicus. The genus name meaning swanbeak, and the species name being after a tribal area in Germany. More specimens would be found in both Germany and France, some of which were given a different name, that being Gallodactylus, in 1974. It wasn't until 1996 that Christopher Bennett released a study making Gallodactylus, and all the fossils under its name, synonymous with Cycnorhamphus. He would publish more papers on this in 2010 and 2012, cementing the differences in the fossils were down to age, gender, or simply individual variation, and that they all belong to the same genus. This became incredibly important with the discovery of one fossil in particular, called the pattern pelican, but we'll go into detail on that one later in the video. Cycnorhamphus was a pterosaur that belonged to the Archaeopterodactyloideae, a clade of pterosaur families that lived from the late Jurassic to the early Cretaceous, and are known for their peculiar and extravagant beaks and skulls. More specifically, Cycnorhamphus was in the Galeodactylidae family, distinguished by having less than 50 teeth in their jaws and crests that ran along their heads but don't reach the tip of their snouts. It lived during the Kimmeridgian age of the late Jurassic, around 152 million years ago. Though a relatively large member of its family, it was still classified as a small pterosaur, with a wingspan up to 1.3 meters, stood about 50 centimeters tall, and probably weighed less than a kilo. Overall, Cycnorhamphus has a typical body plan of a pterosaur, though its wings are quite large compared to others in its close family, and so it may have been more of an efficient flyer, especially when it came to covering long distances. It's the head of this creature that has caused quite the stir over the years. For centuries, Cycnorhamphus looked like this, and it's easy to see why. It could have been identified as just another pterodactylus specimen. But those remains turned out to be those of juveniles. The adults looked much different, as seen in the previously mentioned pattern pelican specimen, which is on display at the Bergmünster Museum. Obviously, Cycnorhamphus goes through some tremendous morphological changes on the road to adulthood. For one, it developed a curved crest that ran from the middle of the snout, runs along the length of the skull, till curving behind it. It was likely a display feature, and therefore may have been larger in males, plus could have had intricate patterns or colours on it. The jaws, however, went through the most extreme changes. While the juveniles have relatively straight jaws, with teeth running along half their length, this changes as they mature. In adults, the top jaw curves upwards and bulges, getting taller and wider. The lower jaw curves downwards and then back up again at a near 90-degree angle, and would have slid in front of the top jaws. All the teeth are concentrated in the tips of the jaws, retaining their peg-like shape. While this would have led to there being a gap in the side of the jaws when they were closed, Cycnorhamphus had odd soft tissue flanges that project from the jaws to cover this opening. These structures are poorly understood, and it's not known how robust or flexible they would have been in life. The reason why they developed this strange beak later in life may simply be so that the different age groups fed on different food sources. The young likely snapped up fish and other slippery sea life, but what were the adults eating? One of the most common theories is that they specialize in cracking open hard-shelled prey, from crustaceans like crabs to mollusks like snails and oysters. Some of the evidence for this is that the muscle attachment points for the jaws indicate that it had a strong bite, and the bones themselves were fairly robust, so could have positioned the prey in the nook of the lower jaw and crushed them, or in the case of oysters, pried open their shells. A more recent, plus more and more favoured hypothesis is that they were filter or skim feeders. Many members of Cycnorhamphus' family are known to be filter feeders, but with far better adapted beaks or teeth for this task. Though Cycnorhamphus may have not been going after krill or plankton in open water, but may have been a sediment sifter, placing the tips of their beaks in mud, sand, or soft soil, and sweeping their heads back and forth till they found small prey from worms, larvae, fish, or amphibians. Evidence for this comes from the wear patterns on the teeth seem to have been worn down more from scraping against each other rather than constantly crushing hard prey. Its strong jaw muscles may not have been for a powerful bite, but the continual effort needed to constantly sweep their jaws through different mediums in order to locate prey. The most prominent feature for this theory is the flanges that ran along the outside of the beak. It's not likely they were especially sturdy, and if the animal bit down on a hard-to-crack prey item incorrectly, accidentally crushing down on the flanges, they could break them. Instead, these likely acted more like baleen structures in whales and similar bristle-like teeth seen in other pterosaur species. Used to eject water as the animal was feeding, as it may have been constantly opening and closing its jaws, sucking in prey and expelling the excess water, similar to a flamingo. Cycnorhamphus is certainly a perplexing pterosaur. From its complicated naming history, which I did not cover in full for my own sanity, to its diet and skull changing throughout its life. Given its lack of specializations, I'd say it could have fed on a wide range of prey, or even plants, and wasn't restricted just to durophagy or skim feeding. Overall, it is a wonderfully odd-looking genus that stands out even amongst its peers. But what do you think of Cycnorhamphus, the salad-tongue pterosaur? And for my question of the week, do you think it was more of a hard shell cracker or more of a sweeping sifter? Or do you think it was doing something else entirely? Another theory I heard was it was a specialized jellyfish slicer. Somehow. Not sure of that one, but it was too much of a cool idea not to include at the end. What lesser known pterosaur would you like me to do a breakdown on next? And until then, please like, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching.